I never thought my dream of clean energy would turn into a nightmare, but that's exactly what happened when Kimberly Vance, our HOA president, decided my solar array was her personal charging station. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs: her entitlement, her Tesla with the ECO WARIOR vanity plate, yes, misspelled, and that saccharine smile that never quite reached her eyes. But I was too busy enjoying my new role as a homeowner and small business owner to notice the predator in designer clothes circling my investment. I'm Jack Morrison, and until 6 months ago, I was just an Army veteran trying to start over. After 15 years of service and 2 tours in Afghanistan, I'd saved enough to open my own computer repair shop and buy a modest house in Oak Ridge Estates. The previous owner had installed a state-of-the-art solar system that generated more power than the house needed. Perfect, I thought. I could reduce my carbon footprint and sell excess energy back to the grid for a nice little credit. The first month was bliss. My electric bill showed a $120 credit, and I was feeling pretty good about my eco-friendly setup. But the second month, that credit dwindled to $45. By the third month, I was actually paying for electricity despite my roof being covered in solar panels. Something's not adding up, I told my neighbor, Pete, as we stood in my driveway one Saturday morning. These panels should be generating way more than I'm using. Pete scratched his beard and looked thoughtful. You know, I've been meaning to tell you something. I've seen Kimberly's Tesla parked by your side yard a few times. Thought maybe you two were friends or something. I frowned. Kimberly Vance? The HOA president? I barely know her beyond getting citations for my grass being half an inch too tall. Well, there's an external outlet on that side of your house, right? The one the previous owner installed for his RV? My stomach dropped. You don't think? Pete shrugged. Just saying what I saw. That night, I set up a motion-activated camera pointing at the external outlet. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:43 p.m., my phone buzzed with an alert. I checked the footage to see a familiar Tesla Model X pulling alongside my house. Out stepped Kimberly Vance in designer loungewear, looking around furtively before connecting a charging cable from my outlet to her car. She even had the audacity to use her own padlock on my outlet cover so no one else could use it. I watched in disbelief as she checked her phone, nodded with satisfaction, and walked away, leaving her car quietly stealing my electricity. By my calculations, she'd been charging her $100,000 plus vehicle on my dime for at least 2 months. No wonder my credits had disappeared. The next morning, I found her car still connected, fully charged, and sitting pretty. I was livid but decided to play it smart. I took photos documenting everything, then waited by my window. At 7:15 a.m., Kimberly returned in her husband's Range Rover, disconnected her Tesla, removed her padlock, and drove away in her fully charged car, all without a hint of shame. When I checked my usage data, I estimated she'd stolen about $300 worth of electricity already. But that wasn't even what angered me most. It was the entitlement, the invasion, the sheer audacity of it all. I decided to confront her directly. Professional. Adult. Reasonable. I caught Kimberly at the community mailboxes that afternoon. Excuse me, Kimberly? Could I have a word? She turned with that plastic smile. Jack, right? The new guy with the unique landscaping choices. I ignored the dig. I noticed you've been charging your Tesla using my home's electricity. I'd appreciate if you'd stop and perhaps reimburse me for. I don't know what you're talking about. She cut in, smile never faltering. But while we're chatting, your garbage cans were visible from the street yesterday. That's a violation. You'll find the notice in your mailbox. Before I could respond, she clicked her fob, and her Tesla beeped cheerfully as she strutted away. Sure enough, there was a $50 fine notice in my mailbox. For garbage cans that I had properly stored behind my fence, just not to her liking. That night, her Tesla returned to my outlet. And the next night. And the next. Each time, I documented it, calculating the growing debt. I sent a certified letter requesting payment for the stolen electricity, and received no response. I emailed the HOA board, only to learn that Kimberly hadn't shared my complaint with them, claiming no knowledge of such an accusation. I was at a crossroads. I could call the police, but would they care about stolen electricity? I could escalate to the full HOA board, but Kimberly had most of them wrapped around her finger. Or I could get creative. And that's when the idea struck me. If Kimberly wanted my electricity so badly, I'd give it to her, but on my terms. I hired an electrician friend to make some modifications to my external outlet. Nothing dangerous, nothing illegal, just a custom setup that would give me complete control. We installed a smart outlet that I could monitor and control remotely, connected to a separate circuit with its own meter to track exact usage. Most importantly, we added a voltage regulator that could be adjusted via my phone. The next time Kimberly's Tesla connected to my outlet, I watched through my security camera with a smile. I waited until 3 a.m. when she would be deep asleep, then used my phone app to reduce the voltage to the minimum level that would still register as charging on her Tesla's display. Just enough power to make her think it was working, but not enough to actually charge the battery. When morning came, Kimberly approached her car, disconnected the cable, and drove off, completely unaware that her battery was barely 10% charged, enough to get her perhaps 5 miles down the road. At 9:17 a.m., my phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello?" I answered innocently. "Jack? It's Kimberly Vance." Her voice was tight with controlled rage. "My car died on Riverside Drive." "I don't suppose you know anything about that." I feigned confusion. "How would I know anything about your car troubles, Kimberly?" "Don't play dumb. I know you did something to your outlet." "My outlet? The one you've been illegally using to steal my electricity for months?" "That outlet?" Silence stretched between us. Then, "I expect my car to charge properly tonight, or you'll regret it." "Is that a threat, Kimberly? Because I have quite a collection of videos showing you trespassing and stealing from me. Would you like me to share those with the police? Or maybe the HOA board?" She hung up. I smiled, knowing I'd struck a nerve, but also knowing this was far from over. That evening, I noticed something odd while reviewing my security footage. Kimberly had parked across the street for nearly an hour, just watching my house. As darkness fell, she drove away, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something was coming. The next day, I received not one but 3 HOA violations in my mailbox. Improper window coverings, $75 fine. Unauthorized garden plants, $150 fine. Unapproved solar installation, $500 fine. The last one made me laugh out loud. The solar panels had been approved by the previous HOA board years before I bought the house. This was pure retaliation, and sloppy at that. I took photos of my perfectly compliant windows and the approved native plants in my garden. Then I pulled out the solar approval documents the previous owner had included with the house sale. Rather than just fighting back, I decided to dig deeper. Something about Kimberly's fixation on my house felt personal, almost desperate. Why risk her reputation to steal electricity from one specific neighbor? I reached out to Julia Torres, a real estate agent who had sold several homes in the neighborhood and who I'd met at a community barbecue. "The previous owner of my house, did he have issues with Kimberly Vance?" I asked when she agreed to meet me for coffee. Julia hesitated, glancing around the cafe before leaning forward. "Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Kimberly tried to buy your house when it went on the market. She was outbid and threw an absolute fit. She even tried to sabotage your purchase by telling the seller you wouldn't maintain the property. Why would she want my house specifically? It's not the biggest or nicest in the neighborhood." "It's the solar array," Julia said. "It's one of the most efficient systems in the county. Kimberly's husband lost a fortune in some cryptocurrency scheme last year, and word is they're barely staying afloat. That Tesla? She can't afford to charge it normally, and she can't afford to sell it either, she's underwater on the loan." Suddenly, everything clicked. This wasn't just about entitlement, It was about desperation disguised as entitlement. Armed with this new understanding, I formulated a plan. Not just to stop her theft, but to expose her corruption to the entire neighborhood. That night, I left the smart outlet active but set up a special surprise. When Kimberly's Tesla connected at midnight, my system immediately sent an alert to my phone. I watched via the security camera as she attached her cable, locked it with her padlock, and slipped away into the night. I let the car charge normally for 2 hours, just long enough for her to believe everything was back to normal. Then I triggered my special modification. The outlet began logging and displaying the exact kilowatt-hours being drawn, calculating the cost in real time, and projecting it via a small weather-resistant digital display I'd mounted next to the outlet. But that wasn't all. Each kilowatt-hour consumed also triggered a small camera to take a picture, which was automatically compiled into a time-lapse video and uploaded to a private website I'd created. KimberlyTheElectricityThief.com. The site wasn't public yet, that would come later. By morning, the display showed she'd stolen $17.46 worth of electricity in a single night. I'd also calculated her total historical theft at approximately $478.32 based on my usage patterns and timestamps from security footage. When Kimberly arrived to collect her car, I was waiting with a cup of coffee and a smile. "Good morning, Kimberly," I called cheerfully from my porch. "Sleep well?" She froze when she saw me, then noticed the digital display blinking with her electricity usage. Her face contorted with rage. "What is that?" she demanded, storming toward me. "Just a meter," I replied casually. "I like to know exactly how much electricity I'm giving away for free. Or rather, not for free anymore." I held up an invoice I'd prepared, itemizing every charging session with dates, times, and costs. At the bottom was the total, $478.32. "You have 2 options," I said, no longer smiling. "Pay what you owe, or I take this evidence to the police and file charges for theft and trespassing. Oh, and the HOA board will receive copies of everything, including how you've been abusing your position to target me with false violations." Kimberly's face went from red to white. "You wouldn't dare." "I also have some interesting questions about HOA funds," I continued, bluffing based on a hunch. "The annual financial statements seem to be missing some details about discretionary spending." That struck a nerve. Her eyes widened just enough to confirm my suspicions. "You have until 5 p.m. today," I said, turning to go back inside. "Cash or check is fine." "This isn't over," she hissed, disconnecting her Tesla and climbing inside. "Oh, I know," I replied. "It's just beginning." As predicted, Kimberly didn't pay by 5 p.m. Instead, at 6:30 p.m., there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing on my porch. "Mr. Morrison? I'm Officer Davis, this is Officer Rodriguez. We received a complaint about harassment and destruction of property from Kimberly Vance. She claims you damaged her vehicle by tampering with an electrical outlet she had permission to use." I smiled. "I've been expecting this. Would you like to come in? I have quite a story to tell you." Over the next hour, I showed the officers my evidence: security footage of Kimberly trespassing, data logs of stolen electricity, her padlock on my outlet, and the threatening phone call I'd recorded, legally, in our one-party consent state. I explained how my tampering involved nothing more than reducing voltage to a level still within safe operating parameters, a level that couldn't possibly damage her vehicle. "And here's the most interesting part," I said, pulling out copies of the false HOA violation she'd issued. "This appears to be retaliatory harassment. I've never given her permission to use my electricity. She's stealing it because she's in financial trouble." The officers exchanged glances. "Mr. Morrison, would you be willing to file a formal complaint?" Officer Rodriguez asked. "This goes beyond a civil dispute when we consider the trespassing, theft, and possible misuse of HOA authority." "Absolutely," I said. What happened next exceeded my wildest expectations. The police investigation revealed that Kimberly had been embezzling from the HOA accounts for over a year, siphoning money into her personal accounts to maintain her lifestyle, while her husband's finances collapsed. She'd been selectively enforcing rules against residents who questioned her decisions and waiving fees for board members who stayed loyal. 2 weeks later, I sat in the emergency HOA meeting as Kimberly was unanimously removed from the board. Criminal charges for embezzlement, theft, and misuse of position were pending. Her Tesla had been repossessed the previous day. As the meeting concluded, several neighbors approached me with handshakes and thanks. "We've been wanting to get rid of her for years," said Eleanor, a retired teacher who lived across the street. "But nobody had the guts to stand up to her. Or the evidence," added Pete with a knowing smile. The newly elected HOA president, a reasonable retired judge named Howard, pulled me aside after the meeting. "Jack, we'd like to refund all those bogus fines she charged you, with interest," he said. "And the board was wondering if you'd consider joining us. We could use someone with your attention to detail." I laughed. "Thanks, but I've had enough HOA drama for a lifetime. I just want to run my business and enjoy my solar panels in peace." "Fair enough," Howard chuckled. "But we're implementing new transparency rules because of you. All financial records will be available to homeowners quarterly, and no board member can issue fines without secondary approval." As I walked home that evening, I noticed Kimberly's house was already displaying a "for sale" sign. Her husband stood on the lawn, looking defeated as he adjusted the sign. My phone pinged with an email notification. It was from the county prosecutor, confirming my appointment to give a formal statement in the case against Kimberly Vance. I smiled, looking up at my solar panels gleaming in the setting sun. They were mine again, generating clean energy and savings without feeding a thief's entitlement. Sometimes justice requires a bit of engineering, documentation, and the courage to stand up to bullies, even when they come disguised as HOA presidents with eco-friendly cars. As for the website I created, I never had to make it public. The evidence it contained was devastating enough in the hands of law enforcement. But I keep it archived, just in case. Because if there's one thing my military career taught me, it's always to have backup power, especially when dealing with people who try to steal yours.